We all need to do hard things because it changes our lives, and I believe it changes the world. And knowing goal-setting theory makes it more possible that we can do these things. Gallup said in their State of the Workplace in early 2024, the number one problem facing all workplaces is a lack of productivity based on faulty goal systems.
That's Caroline Miller. For over 3 decades, she's been a pioneer with her groundbreaking work in the areas of the science of goal setting, grit, happiness, and success. She is recognized as one of the world's leading positive psychology experts on this research and how it can be applied to one's life and work for maximum transformation. So you'll learn 1, the top goal-setting myth to abandon immediately, 2, the 2 types of goals and how to set them, and 3, the bridge methodology for effective goal setting. And if you'd like a summary write-up of some of these takeaways you can read in a quick email, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Caroline Miller. Caroline, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to talk about big goals, and I'm curious. You've been around the block, doing a lot of research, positive psychology, and more. What would you say is your most fascinating discovery you've made about us humans and goal setting, goal achieving?
I think my biggest awareness aha moment is that 20 years after I learned goal setting theory, the number one ranked management theory of all time of 73 theories, also known as the 800-pound gorilla, everyone sets goals and no one knows this number one theory. And it floors me to this day that it remains one of the most unknown but most validated theories ever to come out of psychology.
Now, I'm intrigued. So if there's 73 theories, how does a theory get to win number one? I'm imagining a reality TV show which the theories are competing against each other with a judges and audience input. How does that work?
Well, I only report the news, but I do know I have research showing that academics, management theorists, people in the field who actually know what the science is about when you look at self-efficacy theory or different kinds of bias, et cetera, goal-setting theory is universally ranked number one because of its importance and because everyone does it. And if we knew the science, which is so amazing that people don't, if we knew the science, I do believe we'd be more productive, more engaged, more successful. And as a mother, I also feel strongly that our children would grow up with dreams that they had the tools to accomplish, which I don't think they have. And I think that's a huge error we've made as a society and as parents to not have this science and teach it.
Well, I'm intrigued. Like, what kind of lift might we see in terms of our goal attainment rates, piddling around as we do, ignorant of the science versus utilizing all these best practices?
I can't give you a percentage, but what I can tell you is that most people disengage and become overwhelmed by the size of their goals, the fact that they have a big dream and they don't know where to start. And so as the mother of 3 adult children who grew up being told to tell them they were winners, and that if we did this, they would all grow up confident and happy and they'd be very hard workers. What instead we found out now that this era of self-esteem parenting is over is that for the most part, they're fragile and they can't always take feedback or performance reviews. Now, I'm not being universal, not all are like this, but the findings are pretty robust that this is a generation that doesn't know how to do hard things and break goals down into small component parts and have mastery experiences. But I also speak for the parents. I mean, I've known this theory for 20 years. I've been all over the world. I work with CEOs and leaders in companies big and small, countries big and small. And they all set goals, and no one has this science. So I think universally we are underperforming and underachieving. And one of the things in big goals that I'm really proud of is I dug into the research that shows that it's mostly white men who have benefited from these productivity systems that started in the 1880s and do not benefit women and people of other cultures, partly because we weren't around. We weren't in the workplace. This is not how we thought the workplace would be, but it hasn't evolved. And it's something that isn't discussed. It's time to have this bridge between the 20th century and the 21st. And my book addresses that gap that I'm happy to share more about.
Well, yeah, I guess I'd like to understand, if you don't have a precise percentage, perhaps could you tell a story in terms of a transformation and unfolding by utilizing the science?
I could tell you a million stories. I work with one executive, a lot of executives, but I'm thinking of one in particular, a CEO of a major, let's call it outdoor remodeling company, who through COVID just kept setting the same performance goals for the salespeople and his senior leadership team. But the entire society turned upside down. We were in what Locke and Latham would call a mass learning goal condition, where everything you did 5, 10 years ago can't be done the same way anymore. We've got a distributed workplace. We've got artificial intelligence. We've got all kinds of supply chain issues. And so what he did was he hit pause on all of the goals that he had for himself and for his senior leadership team. And he said, Caroline Miller's going to come in and teach us about goal setting theory. And we're going to now slow down, and we're going to take all of these goals and turn them into learning goals, because we're learning new ways to do things. The world is different. This is a period not unlike after the Black Death, which gave birth to the Renaissance, which became more evidence-based approaches to medicine and art and science, and so on and so forth. So what he did was he changed the entire goal-setting dashboard within the company. People were able to take the time to learn how to do their jobs in new ways because they had to. They couldn't meet with customers in person anymore. There were different ways of working with computer systems that people had to learn, let alone artificial intelligence. That's a whole different conversation. And as people slowed down, they became more curious and engaged in what they were being asked to do, how the onboarding was done. And as a result, the company hit record profitability in the last few years. And he's a very satisfied customer. But that's just very typical of what happens when people learn about Locke and Latham's goal-setting theory and realize that there are two kinds of goals, performance goals and learning goals, and you can't mix them up. And when you do, when you take something that the world's never done before, you've never done before, a learning goal, and you skip the time that it takes to gather the skills and the education, the knowledge to do this job, and the time to kind of try out, how do I personalize my approach to this? What you end up is something called Goals Gone Wild, which is embodied by Boeing's 737 MAX disasters, the Titan submersible with Stockton Rush. You can't skip the learning component when you're doing something for the first time. When you do, people lose their reputations, companies lose their reputations, and in the case of the Titan submersible, Boeing, other companies, Ford, the Ford Pinto, people lose their lives. So it's a serious issue. It's a simple theory, but the importance of getting it right cannot be overstated.
Okay. So lay it on us. What's sort of our fundamental misconception? Is it the performance learning stuff?
I think the fundamental misconception is that people think SMART goals is science.
Okay.
And it's not. It was this dude, this manager in 1982 who was going to give a presentation. It was this sticky acronym, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, whatever. I mean, the part of the problem that we've discovered with SMART goals, because it's been studied, is not only does it undermine goal achievement, because if you use the word realistic for R, what you find is that people undershoot their ability to go after hard goals. And Locke and Latham found that the best possible outcome for all goals is challenging and specific. So imagine my arm reached out in front of me, or yours, and the goals that we should be shooting for that always get the best outcomes are past our fingertips. So when you use R, realistic, what you find is that people undermine their ability to find out what they're made of. And they usually shoot and get very mediocre results. But it's called jargon mishmash syndrome, because SMART means different things to different people. So it's not science. It's just not science. So that's one of the first things that I would say, is that people labor under the conception or the misconception that they know the science of goal setting. And I think we take it for granted that we have accomplished things in our lives. And if I did this, I can do that. When in fact, the science came out in 1990, and it's still the most unknown, undelivered piece of research from academia into the mass market. And it stuns me every day. No matter where I'm talking, no matter who I'm working with, their productivity dashboard in their company or in their lives is based on an urban legend or vision boards or law of attraction or some version of that. We are not supporting ourselves and the people around us, and our children in particular, in the best possible way if we don't go out and learn this science. So I think it is a crisis of unimaginable proportions, because we have a generation that is anxious and depressed and disengaged from the workplace, and quite often comes right down, as Gallup said in their State of the Workplace in early 2024, the number one problem facing all workplaces is a lack of productivity based on faulty goal systems. We don't have good goal hygiene. And if we don't know the science, it's like trying to put a cornerstone down for a building that's rocky or isn't going to hold the weight of the building, and everything's going to crumble. We have to know the science of goal setting. This, to me, is an urgent plea for everyone to stop and say, it's time to go in an evidence-based direction, just like we did during the Renaissance after the Black Death. Everything has to come up a notch, and I've worked on that. Plus, in the book, Big Goals, I introduced something called a bridge methodology that then is the gap between here's goal setting theory, here's the right goal, but how are you going to accomplish it? And what I've brought to bear is all of this science that no one has heard of, from academia, from psychology, from motivation, from mindset research, from grit, to help us understand how to accomplish those goals. And as I said earlier, there's a gender component that people haven't paid attention to. Not all approaches to productivity and goal setting fit everyone. You have to personalize it based on who you are and where you are.
Carolyn, are you telling me that if I put my dreams on a vision board and secrete them to the universe is not going to bring them into my reality?
Let me think about that. No.
Okay. Well, then lay it on us. Let's get these principles associated with the goals theory.
Well, what I will say about vision boards is the reason why they hang around so much, I call them these zombie theories. They're just not dying like SMART goals. They're dying. They're hanging around, but they won't go away. There's some little kernel of something important in vision boards, and that is the science of priming. When we remind ourselves with pictures or words or aromas, things that enter our conscious and subconscious minds, that prime us to act and think in goal-directed ways, we are more likely to accomplish our goals. But that's a small subset of what must be done. It's never enough to just have a vision board or to just chant or to write something in lipstick on your mirror. I think that we're not taking ourselves seriously if we're going to just have this one-dimensional approach or magical approach to getting what we want. We can't skip the hard work piece. That's just not possible. And you know what? Even little kids know that if you give them something that they haven't worked hard for, they don't tend to value it. None of us do.
All right. So let's hear the principles fundamentally. How do we set goals?
How do we set goals? So we start with goal setting theory. Basically, do I have a performance goal or a learning goal? In the book, I call a performance goal a checklist goal. So this is something you've done before that'll fit on a checklist, and you can actually give that checklist to someone else, and they'll have a shot at accomplishing that goal. So what it is like a hotel maid. It's like a surgeon going into the operating theater and checking, do I have all the right instruments or the right people around me? Or pilot in a pre-flight, checklist. Checklists are for things you've done before and you don't want to skip a step. And for that reason, you know that you can set a specific outcome by a specific date. And again, Locke and Latham say challenging and specific. That's a performance goal / checklist goal. The other kind of goal is a learning goal. So you start with that. And you can call it a moonshot goal, meaning you haven't done it before. The world hasn't done it before. And then you have to say, what is it I need to learn in order to accomplish this goal? Who has that knowledge? Is it on Wikipedia? Is there a YouTube? Is there a book? Is there a podcast? Where am I going to flatten my learning curve? So then you go into this bridge methodology I came up with, the brainstorming. But the brainstorming really ought to start with this one prompt that I keep coming back to. What's new? What's new? What do I not know yet? What's new in the world that would help me become more efficient and effective in this goal? And I'll just tell you one little story that I'm just transfixed by, and that's this Herculaneum papyri, how they've solved this library of charred scrolls. Julius Caesar's father-in-law in Herculaneum, when Vesuvius erupted, the biggest, most wonderful library in ancient history was charred, and these scrolls became like little pieces of firewood. And for years, hundreds of years, I want to say 400 years, we've been trying to unroll them. Guess what happened? During COVID, the former CEO of GitHub got fascinated and bored by the fact that he's sitting at home every day, and he goes on Wikipedia and he starts looking up ancient tragedies and catastrophes, and he stumbles on this unsolved thing like, oh my God, what do we know now from Silicon Valley, from high particle accelerators, from artificial intelligence that could help us unroll these scrolls? Long story short, they now have unrolled by using artificial intelligence and beaming lights into these scrolls and virtually unwrapping them. They have started to read these ancient scrolls, and it's going to remake everything we know about religion and art and philosophy. It is just stunning. So you always start with what's new. So in the book, I talk about why traditional brainstorming approaches don't work, but I have a long set of prompts I have in the book to help people through brainstorming. Relationships. Relationships mean not just who do I need to know and have in my life to accomplish this goal, but who do I need to put a container around and keep them out of my life while I'm accomplishing this goal? People don't look at that, and that's critical. And we know research from Shelley Gable at the University of California, Santa Barbara. She found that when you share a big goal, a dream with somebody else, their response has to be curious and enthusiastic. That's the one signal that says to you, this person has my back, they're in my corner, and I can tell them more, and they are going to help me accomplish that goal. So who should be in my life and who shouldn't? Relationships. Investments. How am I going to invest my character strengths in the pursuit of this? We know from positive psychology that knowing your top 5 character strengths and using them, deploying them in new and interesting ways to accomplish your goals or to interact with people throughout the day makes you more successful. It also makes you happier, and it makes you more authentic. So the investments can be time, energy, money, character strengths, but you have to think through, what am I going to sink into this process that I have to build a budget for, build a time budget for, etc. So BRID, decision making. Oh my gosh, I love this topic. So when Danny Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in economics for sunk cost theory and all of his work on how do we value the things that we spend time with, he also did a lot of work on bias. But at the end of his life, he wrote this brilliant book with 2 other economists called Noise. And he was saying that the biggest mistakes we make in decision making is when we don't do a noise audit of how we've made previous decisions, identical decisions. What are we being impacted by? Did our football team win or lose yesterday? And are we making the same decisions as judges in identical cases? Are we paroling these people and keeping these other people in jail? Noise is a huge part of how we make decisions. It's rare for me to find someone who has sat down and made a list of their best decisions and the components of those decisions and done a noise audit. And I think this is why there's a big move to teach game theory and poker, especially to women who don't always learn how to take risks. Poker, and Texas Hold'em in particular, is how we're beginning to teach people how to take risks in decision-making situations that they must take even if they have imperfect information.
With noise, we're defining that as our historical track record of decisions. How are we defining noise here?
Noise is when we have the exact same decision to make about, let's say, a referee on a football field, right? And it's the same player going off sides. And it's a Sunday or a Thursday night game, and you didn't get a lot of sleep before the Thursday night game, and you see the same player or the same play unfolding in front of you, but you make a different decision. You throw a flag or you don't throw a flag. Noise is when you have the same kind of decision to make, but you make it differently on different days because of things that are going on in your life. And that's different from bias. Bias is when you're biased against a certain gender or a certain class of people, or you're biased against people who didn't go to your school and you're a hiring manager. That's bias. Noise is when you're allowing the variables, usually you don't know this is happening, to interfere with decision-making so that your decisions are uneven. And what's interesting is artificial intelligence is proving to be one of the greatest ways to spot and fix noise problems in decision-making, because it's just taking data and making a decision on an algorithm. And that's really what we need to strive to do. Does that help?
Yes. So could you just give me 8 examples of noise variables?
Another example of a noise variable I said about a hiring manager would be, let me think. I'm going to go back to a judge who is making parole decisions. And during the course of a day at 8 o'clock in the morning, they make a parole decision in a complicated decision where they give somebody parole instead of sending them back to jail because they had a good night's sleep, their football team won, but maybe their willpower's a little bit higher in the morning, but they're making a decision that they won't always make at the end of the day from decision fatigue. That's noise.
I see. So the variables would have to do with like their rest. Their restedness is noise.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually a valid consideration in terms of what is optimal for a decision regarding that person's fate.
Right.
And so if they're tired, they're hungry, they've just gotten a fight with somebody, it's sort of like they've got an emotional thing going on.
They're distracted. Mm-hmm.
And I've also heard that we can estimate the steepness of a hill differently if there's a friend with us or not. And so in a way, that's noise. Friendship is noise. Is that it's somewhat ambiguous, but we're assessing our prospects based on things that are not intrinsic to the situation on the ground.
I know the research you're speaking of, that's a little bit different than a decision. That's a thought. That's a thought you're having. And you're saying if this is a more effortful climb or it's not, based on whether you're looking up, down, do you have a heavy backpack? I'll give you another example of noise that I think most people can relate to, is a radiologist reading mammogram screens. And they look identical. There's very little difference between the two mammograms. But depending on the time of day, again, did you sleep? Did you have a good lunch? Are you distracted because you got a call from school and your child needs to be picked up? What you might do is send somebody to come back in for a second mammogram, or say to the other person, you're clear. And again, I'll just say, artificial intelligence is reading scans and removing noise from decision-making. It's fascinating. So that's just another example of noise. Same screen, same X-ray, different decision based on the noise that's going on in your life. And what's interesting is Kahneman said at the end of his life, and he died in March of this year, he said, this is a bigger problem that's so not discussed, bigger than bias. And we get all this bias training. Noise is a bigger problem. And it potentially costs companies and countries billions of dollars.
Yeah. Okay. And you said there's a final component.
So grit. So I've worked closely with Angela Duckworth. I wrote a book called Getting Grit, and I'm fascinated by the fact that we can break grit down into components like humility and patience and the ability to take risks and persistence and perseverance, the ability to stick with a task just a little bit longer. When you have big goals, it's baked into that idea, that fact that you're going to have to be more than just resilient. You're going to have to do hard things for a long period of time. So you have to essentially do a grit assessment on yourself. Do I have what it takes to actually hang in there through the dark night of the soul? Do I have the people around me who will reflect back to me that I have what it takes to finish what I'm starting right now? Grit is a quality that can be cultivated, and it can also be contagious. So Angela Duckworth found at West Point that if you had a low grit score, because she does, the grit scale on incoming cadets at West Point, because what they found is your grit score predicts whether or not you drop out that first summer, Beast Barracks, because they couldn't figure it out. For 100 years, they couldn't figure out leadership scores, grades, whatever. Nothing spoke to the dropout rate during Beast Barracks until the grit scale. And she found that when you room a lower grit score cadet with a higher grit score cadet, it's contagious because you do a few things differently for longer periods of time. You might even be a mindset. I call it changing the channel. You can learn to change the channel in your brain to go to a place where you hang in there a little bit longer. So you have to have what's good grit.
Now, is the high grit contagious to the low grit person or vice versa?
Yes. High grit the lower grit person becomes grittier.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
And the higher grit person does not become less gritty? They're not infected by the lazy person in their... Okay.
Because the culture of West Point rewards grit. And that's something Locke and Latham also found, is they found that people are less happy while they're pursuing hard goals over a long period of time. They set, again, these challenging and specific goals, and they were puzzled. Why are you a little less happy while you're pursuing these long-term goals, but then happier at the very end? It's because society prizes and rewards that kind of behavior. You want to have good grit, and I'll quickly say there are three kinds of bad grit that we all have to look out for. One is stupid grit. I call it stupid grit. It's like summit fever in mountaineering, where you see the top of the mountain and you're so drunk on getting to the top, or you're so arrogant that you don't listen to the Sherpas and you're not caring about the people you're roped into. You see a lot of arrogance with stupid grit, and it's people who think they know better and they won't change direction. Good grit does not have that component because it has humility baked into it. And then there's faux grit. We have so much faux grit, people pretending to do hard things, faking their PhD research, pretending they won the Medal of Honor, when in fact they bought it on eBay. I mean, so much faux grit, performance-enhancing drugs. And then there's selfie grit, which is also bad. And that's when you do hard things, but you are so obnoxious about it because you tell everybody that you suck all the oxygen out of the room, and that repels people. So good grit is important when you have big goals because you will have to dig a little bit deeper and work harder to achieve them. And then excellence. People need to start at the beginning of their goal-setting strategy with, what am I attempting to hit here? What is my definition of excellence with my behavior or with this particular outcome? Because in goal setting, we say that which cannot be measured cannot be achieved. You must have a measurement in place of the excellence you're shooting for. And I'll just remind you, Locke and Latham found that the best possible outcome was always past your fingertips, challenging and specific. Low goals and no goals got mediocre to no results whatsoever. And at the end of every day, believe it or not, we do scan our days subconsciously for what we're proud of that we did that day. And the things that build what's called authentic self-esteem are the things we did outside of our comfort zone in pursuit of meaningful goals. We never build our confidence and pride on doing easy things. And this is why I believe we have really done a tremendous disservice to the generation of young adults now when we took away valedictorians and gave them comfort animals, and we dumbed down the playgrounds. And, we just did a lot of things that ended up stripping elite out of their vocabularies, and they didn't know, what does excellence look like and how am I going to get there? And the minute you introduce that back in, people take more pride in what they're doing, and they change their perception of themselves. What am I capable of doing? How did I do it? And I'm proud of myself. And I also know who has my back. I know who was there for me when it was hard and when I fell down and when I needed to get back up. That's why we all need to do hard things, because it changes our lives. And I believe it changes the world. And knowing goal-setting theory makes it more possible that we can do these things.
All right. Well, could you perhaps give us an example of a worst practice and a best practice approach to, let's say we're tackling a goal to launch some new and improved marketing initiatives to reach record-breaking levels of revenue?
So let's say you're at a company and you're launching sweatshirts, and you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to have this font or that font or this color or that color. And you just want to do a brainstorming session. So you pull everyone in, 30 people into a conference room, and you start throwing around ideas. And at the end of the day, you've come up with maybe one or two good ideas, but hey, that's it. And then you don't set a target for, well, how quickly can we do it? Or is there a better way to do this? Remember, brainstorming, you also want to know what's new. Is there a better, more efficient way? How do we find out where to do that? You don't find out any of those things. It's what we've always done before. This is the approach we've always used before for brainstorming. You don't even stop and think about relationships. Who in this company also has to know that this is our timeline for achieving this goal? Whose support do we need? You don't figure out investments. You don't even realize that the cost of the kind of material for these sweatshirts has gone up. Oh my gosh, your budget is blown. Your decision making, you've never figured out, what if I have to pivot? What if COVID hits? What if the whole world shuts down? Do I have a playbook for pivoting? Probably not. Good grit. Oh my gosh, I've never faced a situation where I didn't succeed in this job. So then you maybe blame it on somebody else. And excellence is, you probably never started with a target. What's different, you want to know what's good, is when you have this goal, okay, I'm going to make the best possible sweatshirts with this font and this color and the rest of it. And then you go, okay, who around me, who in this world is doing it better than us? Who has set, some kind of dimension of excellence that we can look to? Are they using the kind of fabric that doesn't kind of go into the trash dumps? Is it biodegradable? So you study what excellence looks like. And instead of putting all the people who look like each other in the same room, where you get what I call the Habsburg jaw effect, where it's sterile. There are no ideas that actually live past being in that room because they're not interesting and they're not diverse. You do a very different approach where you maybe have people submit their ideas. Instead of being in a room, you want a diverse set of people brainstorming, and you figure out, is this a learning goal or a performance goal? It's probably a performance goal because you're making, I hope this isn't going on too long, because you're making sweatshirts. So you've done it before, and you've sold 100,000 in 6 months at this price. So you say, hey, we're going to do it with this new fabric, and it's within our budget, and it's a performance goal for us. So we're going to sell 200,000 more. And here's how we're going to do it, because we've got this new factory process. We've got this new sweatshirt. We've got these people who are giving us better prices on fonts, et cetera, et cetera. You go into the decision making. What do we do if, let me give you an example on this, if you don't mind. Abercrombie and Fitch was about to introduce what they called their best dressed guest line. And they had, just as COVID hit, they had taken pictures of all the models. They had all the clothes made, best dressed guest. It was designed to appeal to millennials who needed 5 outfits to go to weekend destination weddings, which was the big thing. So suddenly COVID hits, and they've got this marketing line all paid for. They've got the budget, they've got the models, they've got the pictures, and it's not usable because no one's getting on a plane, no one's going to a wedding, and no one's buying clothes. They pivoted quickly. They said cameras saw their employees. They said, wear our lounge clothes. Take pictures of yourselves. Those are our ads for the next year and a half. That kind of agility and that ability to pivot and do that kind of decision making was such a plus for Abercrombie and Fitch. So then they reintroduced Best Dressed Guest when COVID passed. And anyway, that ended up being a big hit too. So you have to know what's going to happen if we have a black swan event like COVID. And then grit, I already explained. And then excellence, you start with, this is a performance goal for us. This is what we've done before. What's challenging and specific? You name that number, and then you measure along the way to make sure that you're hitting those targets.
Now, let's say it's a learning goal that is new and never before done. How do we approach that differently?
Okay, so let's just take the Apollo spacesuits. So there was that horrible implosion where 3 astronauts died in, I think, the Mercury capsule, Gus Grissom and his 2 colleagues. But Apollo was still going to put a man on the moon. That was their goal. So they had to make these spacesuits that were going to withstand the kinds of pressures and fires and gases that could leak into the suit. So what did they do? They didn't set an exact date and time by which they would have this suit, but they went and they found people who knew how to deal with stretchy fabric and who could sew with great precision. And what did they do? These engineers went and found these seamstresses at Playtex, the girdle company, and they met with them, and in a room of brainstorming, they honored the knowledge and the wisdom of these teenage and young 20-year-old seamstresses quite often who could sew with precision to 1/32 of an inch. And instead of saying, this spacesuit will be ready by September, they said, we're going to get this right. And we're going to incentivize everybody here to have the standard of excellence that this is going to keep people alive, and it's going to allow the United States to come back with what we need to learn about the moon. So all the seamstresses had pictures of the astronauts hung over their sewing machines to remind them of the importance of what they were doing. So they baked in the motivation. And so only, the definition of what excellence looked like was, could this spacesuit allow Neil Armstrong to move and twist and maneuver and reach down and pick up lunar rocks? It wasn't, we're going to have it done by a certain date. Excellence is, it's got to work and it's got to pass these tests. And that's when we're going to say we have a spacesuit that's going to go to the moon. That's a learning goal.
Okay, thank you. Well, tell me, Caroline, any final do's and don'ts that we should know about setting and achieving big goals?
I think the most important one is to assume that you know nothing. And I hate to say that, but 20 years ago when I was handed goal-setting theory at the University of Pennsylvania as one of my first assignments in this Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program, I owned Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey, every single person. I had their books, and I got goal-setting theory, and I went home and I looked at all of them. They were all urban legends. And yet, this is how we have built companies. This is what we've instilled in productivity systems. If you don't know goal setting theory, you don't know how to really set goals effectively. Just start with that one assumption, dip into big goals, and just learn goal setting theory in the first 3 chapters of the book. Get that and then move on to the bridge methodology. Because if you do that, there isn't any dream that you have that you can't have a really good shot at achieving, because you'll be able to create a strategy that's going to get you as close as you can possibly get to that dream or get you there. Because I really do believe that the science changes our lives and it makes us more hopeful and optimistic. I also want to say that one of the most important things in this book is that women do not typically do as well with all the motivational kind of programs and advice that's been doled out for 50 years. I'll just give you an example. When women perform jobs on time and tasks on time and get things done on time, they do not get credit for it. Instead, men often who work longer hours and who don't get it done on time, the men get rewarded for being seen as harder working and more committed to the company. So it's really important that when you pursue a goal, you have to know what's the culture you're working in and how is that culture going to support you in the process of pursuing and achieving your goals. And that's just one of many examples in the book. You have to know, does my company and does the culture I come from and my gender support using this advice to achieve my goal, or is it going to backfire? Because men tend to approach goals as winning and domination and power and success and often money. And women are more communal. They're not as agentic. That's not what women get acculturated and rewarded for. So you can't just take the goal-setting advice that's out there on lots and lots of podcasts, because quite often we don't hear voices other than men talking to men about men, like special forces and presidents and examples that are unrelatable to a lot of us who are taking in really, really interesting stories and advice. But pause and say, does this story relate to me and my life and what I do and what I look like? Because if it doesn't, make sure you do the research to find somebody who does fit that. That's going to be the advice that's going to help you the most.
Big thanks to Caroline for sharing her wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Earthbreeze. I recently saw a Netflix documentary that talks about all the plastic that we throw away and we try to recycle, but it doesn't really get recycled. So I've been trying to reduce my plastic, and the most wonderful way that I've been doing so has been skipping those gigantic laundry detergent bottles for Earthbreeze detergent sheets. Earthbreeze detergent comes in super convenient cardboard, plastic-free packaging, so it's much more eco-friendly than your normal detergent. And I love how portable and quick and easy they are, and I save a pretty reasonable amount of time skipping having to carefully pour and measure liquid detergent into the machine by just tossing a quick and easy sheet in there. I personally like their scent-free version, so check out Earthbreeze for an easy way to get clean clothes without the plastic waste and get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/awesome. That's earthbreeze.com/awesome.
One sponsor checkout is Bamboo HR. I love owning my own business, but I do not love doing government compliance-y things. HR is hard, but Bamboo HR is easy. Bamboo HR is a powerful yet flexible all-in-one HR solution for your growing business. Wrangling benefits, onboarding, performance, recruiting, reporting, vacation time, trainings, oh my, can take hours. But with Bamboo HR, it can take mere minutes. Setting up a demo account is ridiculously easy. I didn't have to coordinate calendars to schedule a demo with a sales rep. Nope. I just created a sample account with sample data within 3 minutes of visiting their website, so I could immediately behold its vast capabilities. The software is genuinely beautiful in its breadth and simplicity. No wonder 34,000 companies trust Bamboo HR with their HR needs. So reclaim your time and check out the free demo at bamboohr.com/free demo. See for yourself all that Bamboo HR can do and how truly affordable it can be too. That's bamboohr.com/free demo. One more time, bamboohr.com/free demo.
Okay, thank you. Now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
My favorite quote is, "You can't keep what you don't give away."
All right. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
My favorite study is The Benefits of Frequent Positive Affect by Sonia Lubomirsky, Laura King, and Ed Diener. And they found at the same time, 2005, as I went back to school, that all success in life is preceded by being happy first. So any goal strategy plan has to start with how you boot up your well-being through positive interventions like using your strengths, exercise, gratitude, meditation. So all success in life is preceded by being happy first. So you got to start there.
And a favorite book?
Woman's Inhumanity to Woman by Phyllis Chesler.
And a favorite tool?
I love Perplexity.
I just started using that. Why do you love it?
Because it gives you the sources and citations where it's getting information from instead of just kind of being a wild scrape of the internet. And I'll just say this, I just spent last weekend at Penn with the co-creator of the Google Notebook, which just got rave reviews everywhere. Google Notebook, Stephen Johnson is the man I was with at Penn last weekend. He has come up with something extraordinary where you can drag all your sources and websites and links and podcasts and whatever into this one notebook. And oh my God, you have your own brain.
Okay. And a favorite habit?
Favorite habit is swimming. I get up at 5 o'clock and I go to swim practice with other master swimmers.
And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often?
You can't keep what you don't give away. Can I give you the backstory on that? Because it's very meaningful to me.
Okay.
Real quickly. When I was overcoming bulimia almost 40 years ago at a time when nobody got better, it was really a death sentence. I started to get better one day at a time at a 12-step group in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was just a miracle. I didn't think I was going to survive. I'm surprised I'm alive some days. And I was so thrilled and proud and happy that I was eating and healthy and just not doing all the destructive things I'd been doing for 7 or 8 years before. And someone said to me, Caroline, it's great that you're in recovery, but you can't keep what you don't give away. That taught me what gratitude and love and giving is all about. If you have something worth sharing that's good, that will help somebody else, you can't keep it unless you turn around and pull someone with you. So people quote that back to me all the time.
Okay. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
My website, CarolineMiller.com, or the book Big Goals has its own website. We just loaded lots of case studies on success and failure using the bridge methodology and goal setting theory. And that's biggoalsbook.com. So my name or biggoalsbook.com.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
I would say choose to do hard things and choose to learn about yourself and your character strengths in the process of doing hard things. And if I have a bonus asterisk point, go to something I have no vested interest in. I don't get anything for this. The VIA Character Strengths Survey. It's free, 15 minutes at viastrengths.org. And boy, it ranks your character strengths from 1 to 24. Lock onto your top 5 and use them every day in new and creative ways to show up and succeed. It's proven, and it makes you happier to just find out what your top 5 are.
All right. Caroline, thank you. This is fun. I wish you much luck with all your big goals.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate Caroline's distinction between the learning goal and the performance goal. And when I get these mixed up, sometimes it can really create frustration and I have to really set my brain back on the right track. I remember recently I was thinking, maybe I can do this editing task. I'm editing some words, but not a ton of words, just thinking about titles and whatnot, while walking on my office desk treadmill at the same time. And I thought, oh man, that's a little bit more complicated of a task than I normally do while walking on the underdesk treadmill at the same time. Oh, I don't know. Will I still be able to complete this task in 40 minutes like I normally can? And I think, no. That's not the right way to think about this. That's a performance goal. Knock this thing out within 40 minutes. Really, I'm looking now toward a learning goal. Can I accomplish any piece of this task for the first time ever, going from 0 to 1, walking on the underdesk office treadmill at the same time that I'm doing a somewhat demanding cognitive task of editing this thing? And so I reset the goal. Hey, this is a learning goal. I'm going to do just these 2 little sections, and then I can stop if I feel like it, and I can call that a victory. I have pursued other initiatives with gusto for longer and achieved 0. So this might feel like a tiny little itsy bitsy bit, but it is significant. It is moving from 0 to 1 and thus worthy of celebration because it's a learning goal instead of a performance goal. And I think that distinction really helps a lot. What are we really doing here? And let's not get unduly frustrated if we're currently in the learning zone by applying the performance pressure too early before that's even really possible to know and or measure and have those sets of expectations. Great stuff from Caroline. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1015. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.